thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Nets post-game show with Frank Isola. I'm Nancy Newman. The task at hand on this Sunday was posting a bounce-back effort. That they did as the teams traded buckets throughout the second half. Frank, it was a one-possession game right down to the finish, and it was Trae Young who decided it.
Yeah, that's a heartbreaking loss for the Brooklyn Nets, who were down 18 in this game in the first half, took a lead in the second half, found themselves down 8 with 1:17 to go, but made the plays to tie the game up, including the Cam Johnson three that was set up by Dorian Finney-Smith being chased off the three-point line. Good job by him finding Cam Johnson in the corner for the three, and then the Nets had to defend one final possession to send this game into overtime. You have Mikal Bridges, who you want that matchup. Mikal Bridges on Trae Young. Give Trae Young a lot of credit. Did a good job getting to his spot, a pump fake, and I was surprised Spencer Dinwiddie, he came from behind and tried to block it. I think in that moment, Spencer was worried about committing a foul. Trae Young is so good at drawing fouls, but Trae Young, the smallest guy on the court, ended up making the biggest play of the game.
Let's look at big picture and then break it down. The Nets fought hard, but they fall for the 6th time in 8 games, dating back to February the 6th, a few days before that trade deadline. They've been getting burned on the boards while giving up close to 117 points per game during that span. And with Brooklyn part of such a tight picture in the Eastern Conference standings, every game takes on heightened importance, especially at this time of year. And we know newness is a factor, but there's only 22 games left.
Yeah, and that's why they played very well tonight. And remember, we talked about it in the pregame show, you know, they have shown this team this season, and it's been different teams, obviously, with all the trades that they made, but this team has been a resilient group. And after getting embarrassed the other night, to their credit, they came out, they fought hard. Even though they fell behind by 18, that was more about Atlanta making shots. And the Brooklyn Nets, I liked a lot of things that I saw from them tonight. I thought Spencer Dinwiddie in the fourth quarter, he did have a bad turnover, but he had a couple of dunks in the fourth, made some shots. Cam Johnson was making plays, Dorian Finney-Smith. So I think overall, I think Jock Vaughn is going to be happy with the performance. He's not going to be happy with the result, of course, after fighting all the way back and see Trae Young make that shot, because that's one of those teams that's chasing them from behind. So now, you know, you just showed the record 2-6 in the last 8, and now you have Milwaukee. Then you get the New York Knicks, and then you get the Boston Celtics. These are all very difficult games that the Brooklyn Nets have to play. It's just about trying to get a win now to kind of end this, because they're in a stretch. They'll play home on Tuesday night, but they're going to be on a stretch where they're playing a lot of road games. The schedule for them is more favorable down the stretch where they have more home games than road games, but right now it's difficult, and they're desperate for a win.
Both these teams with a lot to play for. We're going to look at the Atlanta side of things first, and that's Trae Young. He had his struggles, but he did nail the game winner.
Yeah, Trae Young, he's got the ball in his hands all game, and this is what he does. He's going to dribble. He's going to try to draw fouls. That's a difficult shot that he made. But a lot of times when he gets in the lane, what he's looking to do is throw a lob pass. Again, that's him driving to the basket and converting the layup. You knew late in the game on the final possession that he was going to have the ball in his hands, and that's what the Nets decided, not to throw an extra defender at him to see if they can get the ball out and maybe set up an open shot for somebody else, because Bogdanovich, despite making a terrible defensive play at the end of the game, was hitting threes all game long, and that's the shot by Trae Young. Terrific move by him.
He beats the buzzer. 34 points for him the other night. This shot is the shot that gives the Hawks the 129-127 victory over the Nets on this night.
When you watch it in super slow motion, it looks like maybe after he plants his pivot foot, he then lifts his left foot once again. So the last 2-minute report may come out tomorrow and tell you that that should have been called the travel. Guess what it does for the Brooklyn Nets? Absolutely nothing. The basket still counts. The Atlanta Hawks won the game. Trae Young had 34 points. That was a good move by him. Again, Spencer Dinwiddie, next time we see the play again, he comes from behind, and a lot of times as an offensive player, you feel that defender behind you, and it kind of alters your shot just a bit. Spencer Dinwiddie had a chance to block it, but I understand where he's coming from. He doesn't want to get called for a foul in that situation. You want Trae Young to have to make the shot. The last thing you want to do in a tie game is send Trae Young to the basket. But Spencer right here knows, watch, you could see Trae Young lift his left foot right there,
yep.
Moves it again. And Spencer comes from behind. You're worried about getting him with the body because Trae Young is very good at drawing fouls, throwing his body into you. So Spencer Dinwiddie, that's a really tough play. Give Trae Young most of the credit because that's him making a terrific shot, and Spencer Dinwiddie trying to do all that he can to kind of distract him. So you have a defender, Mikal Bridges, one of the better defenders in the league. Trae Young was able to create an opening, and then Spencer comes around from behind to try to block it, and Trae Young still made the shot. After making a couple of sloppy plays earlier, Trae Young delivers the biggest shot of the game. But
like you said, Spencer made the right decision there, right? And Cam Johnson as well. He brought the effort, and he made a lot of right decisions. So much anticipation of play. He comes to play, and he hit the biggest shot of the night for the Nets that tied it late.
Yeah, and I think what happened the other night, if you look at all the starters, the way that they played tonight, I think they took that personally. The poor performance that they had the other night. They just weren't in that game against the Chicago Bulls. And I said it during the pregame show that none of the starters played more than 27 minutes. So even though you had an afternoon game a couple of days after playing in Chicago, they should have been rested. And this is the biggest shot of the game for the Brooklyn Nets. Great job by Dorian Finney-Smith, getting chased off the three-point line and still finding a shooter. What Bogdanovich was doing in that case, I don't know why he would ever leave a shooter. And you could see the Atlanta Hawks coaches, the minute the pass was made, they could not believe that Bogdanovich had left Cam Johnson, who ends up hitting a huge shot. 10 of 15. He really had it going tonight.
Yeah, Cam, that big three was 7.3 on the clock. That made it 127 all. And his 27 points tonight, this marks his first 20-point game as a Net. So again, we're talking about newness, but they're finding their way.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is a young team, and I think the biggest thing that you saw today was that it was coming off of a 44-point loss. How would they respond? The response was that they came out with a lot of effort. I get it. Atlanta ended up taking an 18-point lead, but that was more about Atlanta just makes difficult shots. DeJounte Murray makes it so difficult for himself. He fades away. He's got guys in his face, and Sarah talked about it during the broadcast. He's just a difficult shot maker, to his credit. But the Brooklyn Nets hung in there, fought. I love when they were down 8 and the fact that they could have given up right there. They ended up tying the game, but when they needed one stop. And these are the things, when the season finally ends, the regular season, wherever they're seated, these are the kind of games that could change where you're seated. Something like this, you end up falling below 6, then you're in the play-in tournament. This was a huge game for them tonight. They needed one stop to force overtime. Doesn't mean that they're going to win in overtime, but they needed one stop, and they couldn't get it. And again, the one thing you could question Jacques Vaughn on, should they have sent another defender at Trae Young to try to get the ball out of his hands? He ended up getting a really good shot. They throw the ball all the way into the back court. He takes his time coming up, and then he ends up scoring from the paint. So Trae Young is getting to the spot on the court that he wanted to get to.
And Coach Vaughn calls the timeout there, and you were wondering why Cam Thomas was not on the floor.
Yeah, no, that was very interesting because Cam Thomas, I thought, had a pretty good game, but he put Royce O'Neal in the game, and Royce O'Neal had hit a couple of big threes in that third quarter. They were going to get a group of shooters on the court. They called the timeout with 17.4 to go, 11 seconds left on the shot clock, down 3. At first, Jock let the team go, but once Spencer Dinwiddie didn't attack, at that point he called timeout. It ended up being a great timeout because then you're getting Nick Claxton out of the game. You want to get another three-point shooter in there. I was a little surprised that it wasn't Cam Thomas, but it worked out. Dorian Finney-Smith. First, Dinwiddie makes the play, getting it to Dorian Finney-Smith, and Dorian Finney-Smith, he gets chased off the three-point line, starts attacking the basket. If you're the Atlanta Hawks, you just got to let him score, because even if he scores, you still have the lead, and there's about 7 seconds to go. For whatever reason, Bogdanovich, who's a good offensive player, that was a mindless play by him to leave. And when you see the replay, the overhead shot that the Yes Network had shown, the coaches on the Atlanta Hawks, they all tilted their headbacks as if to say, what are you doing? Why are you leaving an open shooter? They need a 3. It's amazing how many times these coaches, you could see why they lose their minds over the course of a season. You're telling your guys in the huddle, don't give up an open 3. Let them drive to the basket. What happens when Finney-Smith goes to the basket? Bogdanovich leaves his man, Cam Johnson of all people, who up to that point was 9 of 14, ends up going 10 for 15 because he made that 3.
Well, it set the stage for Cam Johnson. All 3 of his makes from the perimeter occurred in the second half, when Brooklyn as a whole turned its three-point shooting around after a tough first half, but the Nets still connected on less than 36% of their attempts in the game overall. Atlanta hit more than 53 of its tries from long range, making this part of the action our key to the game. Three-point shooting, a lot was decided on the three-point line today.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
This is just the way that the NBA is nowadays. I thought another key was the technical fouls, especially the one from Spencer Dinwiddie on the dunk that he had, and then he ends up looking at the referee. I don't understand. And Spencer was like this when he was first on the Brooklyn Nets, and he was a much younger player. I think the referees are just not going to tolerate this stuff. You could already see something changing over these last few games now that the All-Star break has been over. To me, the referees have had a shorter fuse with players staring and doing things like that. The referees aren't going to put up with that. Every point is important in these games. Trae Young also had a technical foul. To the referees' credit, they need to call the game, and when this stuff happens, they need to make a quick call, and they did. And I thought Spencer Dinwiddie had a terrific game. The only real big mistake he made was that technical foul in the fourth quarter. As you know, Nancy, technical fouls in the fourth quarter, you can't have it. Well, you know, especially when you're a team desperate for a win and it's a close game, you can't get called for a technical foul, especially in a game that they were losing at the time.
Like you said, and we've discussed, that was a huge timeout. But also, as Ian and Sarah talked about, it gave Jacques Vaughn a chance to think about these roles and how they're going to play out. Who's going to be your closer? Yeah. Who's going to be your setup man, you know?
Well, and I still, you know, I said this after the Knicks game. I thought he was playing too many guys, and you look at what happened tonight. Joe Harris and Seth Curry, you did not see them in the second half. So he might be going with a lot of players in the first half, but come the second half, he's paring down that rotation, which I think you need to do. You got to kind of stick with a 6, 7, 8 men and, you know, give them enough minutes out there. And I thought Jock pushed all the right buttons. Everything worked out for the Brooklyn Nets except the final play of the game.
Okay. We've talked about some crucial performers already. Up next on the postgame show, we've got full highlights from our matchup in Atlanta. We will also hear what Jacques Vaughn has to say after his team rallied from an 18-point deficit before losing it at the buzzer. Plus, we will hear from a few of his players, too. Much more on the way. Stay with us on the Nets postgame show. As promised, we're back with full game highlights. Nets Hawks from Atlanta. Second half, Hawks off to that quick start. Bojan Bogdanovic hitting the three. Atlanta up 50-32, and like we said, they did lead by as many as 18. That was in the first half. 3 minutes later, Trae Young to Collins, 57-39. Now the Nets start to roll late in the first half.
Yeah, I thought Cam Thomas really was the difference in the second quarter for the Brooklyn Nets. Got them back in the game. Scored 11 points in the final 5:14 of the second quarter. This is when Cam Thomas is okay being Cam Thomas. When they need baskets, listen, is it the greatest shot? No, but Dorian Finney-Smith gets the putback. At first, they ruled it no basket.
Right.
The Nets ended up challenging, which was a big challenge at the time because they needed that later in the game.
It did count. Young taking it here, though, to the lane and the finish high off glass. At break time, 64-57 Atlanta. On we go to the third. Off a Nick Claxton steal. Finney-Smith, no go on the first try, but the tip, nice second effort.
And just a bad turnover by DeJounte Murray. There are sometimes you watch the Atlanta Hawks play between Murray and Trae Young. Two talented offensive players, but man, do they make some mistakes. There's a Bogdanovic cross-court pass, which is mindless that he made right there. Spencer Dinwiddie comes down, kicks it out to Royce O'Neal, knocks down the three.
2-point edge for the Nets, 86-84. Another takeaway for Brooklyn. It's O'Neal again from deep. 3 straight threes from Royce.
And when he squares his shoulders and kind of takes a deep breath, you're pretty confident that it's going to go down. And he knocked down 3 of them in that third.
Trae Young late in the third, open it up. 95-94, Hawks retake the lead. Back and forth, fourth quarter now. Spencer blowing past and the throwdown. He's assisted technical, though, after that bucket.
Yeah, on a comment where he gets the dunk, but then he looks at the referee, so a 2-point dunk becomes a 1-point dunk because the Atlanta Hawks went down to the other end and converted the technical free throw.
6 minutes to go. Bogdanovic in the lane, pulling up. The 10-footer is good. Hawks lead 112-106. And then 2 minutes to go. Trae Young driving the lane, little floater. This falls for him as well. 123-119.
And this is when they eventually go up by 8 points because this Cam Thomas play, just not smart.
Yeah.
DeJounte Murray gets the steal. What's interesting here on the replay, and they did a great job, showing this during the game. It didn't look like a goaltend, but again, the Nets did not have a challenge.
17 seconds left after the timeout. Dinwiddie handles, Finney-Smith drives, kick out, Johnson wide open in the corner. Here we go. Got it.
And look at the Hawks bench. The assistant coaches, as soon as Bogdanovich left Johnson open, they couldn't believe it. You're leaving a terrific spot-up shooter from the corner. And, of course, this is the final possession of the game. And Trae Young takes his sweet time here. Of course, the clock doesn't start until he touches the ball, and it's just him and Mikal Bridges. Gets to his spot, little pump fake. Did he shuffle his feet? Maybe. Spencer Dinwiddie comes from behind, but Trae Young makes the biggest shot.
Yes, indeed. He finished with a game-high 34 points, and I guess hats off to him. He made the shot when he needed it. The game summary is brought to you by Infiniti. Young's heroics make Atlanta 2-0 since Joe Prunty took over as the team's interim head coach following the dismissal of Nate McMillan. Cam Johnson led Brooklyn with 27 points and was one of 4 Nets who had at least 20, but they fall in this one. Here's head coach Jacques Vaughn on the loss.
Jack, I asked you about that last play and what you saw and how Trae Young was able to hit that shot.
Yeah, we got one-on-one coverage a little bit. We had some shell defense around him, and you just give him credit for the shot that he made with a contest from behind by Spencer. So good shot. Give him credit.
And when you look at this game, you talked about challenging the guys. You guys were down by 18. You were able to kind of chip away at that. What worked well that allowed you guys to get back into that game? And you said that this team needs to get to know each other more. Yeah. What did you learn about this group?
Well, that was a little bit of my message at the end of the game is I think we solved some problems or a little bit. We got a few answers tonight. We'll continue to get more answers as we go forward. I thought we were more physical and aggressive in our defensive stance and how we put our hands on people. We were just more aggressive at the end of the day, and that allowed us to get some stops and get out in transition and get some really good looks from the field. But it all started with our defensive stance.
And those three-pointers, you know, when they weren't falling, in that fourth quarter, you had, you know, Dorian Finney-Smith knock one down, Cam Johnson, and then you had that big one by Cam Johnson forcing to tie it up. What changed so that allows you guys to see those three start to fall? Yeah,
we just really encouraged the guys and told them that the shots that we had earlier that we were missing, really good looks. And so they were going to come around again, just continue to do what you've been doing. Really trust that you're making the right play. And we got rewarded for it down the stretch. And I think that's a really big mental hurdle for this group, which was a positive, seeing our group be able to stay together, get through that stretch of the game and still, reward each other by spraying the ball and getting good shots.
With about 120 left, able to tie with that Cam corner three. Which way you guys are kind of able to make the most of that crunch time and stay in the game up until that Trae shot? Yeah, it's great to see our end-of-game execution. We kind of held on to our timeouts a little bit. We trapped and forced them into our early shot. We got an offensive rebound. We were able to do some offense and defensive substitution at the end, which was good. So that was something that was good to see our group have a little bit of poise at the end, make some shots during that stretch, and really be on the same page during that stretch. Just tough shooting start for Spencer. Obviously finished strong. I mean, I think most of his early shots were jump shots. Just given how elite he is at getting the basket, and would you like to see that even out a bit more? Or do you not much of a problem with the shots left?
Yeah, totally trust him as he starts to feel the group out, who he's on the floor with. I think tonight, we really streamlined the rotation a little bit, who he was out there with. So he'll get a balance of when he can attack. I think you saw with the dunk tonight his ability to get to the rim with some aggression and ferocity. So love seeing that. But at the same time, he has the skill and ability to make shots for us also.
Talked about the guys, mentality and getting rewarded, I guess, when they were defending better and so forth down the stretch. I'm curious, this lineup is, I think, 1-4 basically since you've had this iteration of your team. Where's their headspace now just in terms of morale and, their mindset in that locker room?
Yeah, great challenge. It's a part of basketball, and where you can't feel sorry about yourself. We are playing this game for a living. So first of all, let's put things in perspective. And I think at the end of the day, I'm not going to give them excuses about this being a new group and this is only their 4th or 5th time playing together and the lack of practice and all that stuff. People, you can hold on to that. I'm not going to mention that to the group. I'm not going to give that to the group. What we have to do is continue to stay together and believe that we can get it done. And so that's the mental hurdle for this group. I thought tonight that we did not give in the second half. Even though we were down by double digits, we still persevered towards the end of the game. So those signs were good to see us solve some problems with some of the plays that got us early in the game, that didn't get us late in the game, the talk that was on the bench. So those things, for me, Brian, that's what I'm looking for, because I think that mentality, that care factor will eventually put us in a position where we're winning games. At the end of the day, that's what we want to do. I do see some problems being solved along the way, which is going to help us.
I know you had a stretch where in the beginning of the game, I think were given like 57% shooting when you guys were down 18. You touched on the physicality aspect of it, but was there anything tactically, either in the way you were playing or in rotations or what have you, that you did that allowed you to, I think, hold them like, I don't know, like 4 of 19 or 4 of 20 in that run to get back into the game?
Yeah, you know, their slips to the rim really gave us some problems earlier. So we didn't count on DeJounte shooting 2 threes that he ended up making, or John Collins hitting 2 threes that he ended up making. So those are just part of the game. But that happened a little bit with their ability to peel, and for us to, if you don't have aggressiveness when guys are slipping, you'll cause confusion. And so maybe Bogdanovich gets a 3 because of that. And so then I think we were able to see it on film a little bit, talk about it, and see how important it is for us to be physical as a group. Now, challenge tonight because we played, limited guys a lot of minutes. And so now, can you continue to play physical and aggressive and play and have stamina? So those are the mental things we will continue to put these guys through, because I think you got to go through it to get to the other side.
How impressive was it to see, because coming off of Friday night, you mentioned how this is not going to be a one-man show team, and you look at tonight's game where you had, Cam and Mikal lead the charge in that first quarter, then you had Cam Thomas in that second, and then you have Royce O'Neal, and everyone followed through with that in the fourth. How impressive was it to see these guys come together to see that balance?
Yeah, it's great to we talked about it in film, is the ability for us to really play for each other and create for each other and believe in how we're going to play. And we talked about it's got to be collectively, the ability on both ends. So even Dorian's drive at the end, he could have turned the corner and shot a 2 or a floater, and he gets it to Cam Johnson. So that ability to continue to do it over and over again, to believe in the game plan and stay with it, I thought our guys really grew tonight from that.
Considering after the trade, your personnel before the trade was obviously heavy, tilted offense and star power and all that. Considering the lineup that you're putting out there and the way the roster is constituted, you have defensive players. It's a little surprising when you look since the trade and the defensive numbers have been worse than the offensive numbers. Do you have any kind of thought as to why that would be? One would think it might be the other way around.
Yeah, I think our guys are getting used to, we talked about the offensive terminology. There's a defensive terminology also. And when you've been raised in a system like the 2 kids from Phoenix, they've been raised in that system, that's all they know. So the terminology is different. My communication is different with them. What we're trying to accomplish is different. And it just doesn't happen in 5 games like that. The other 2 are coming from a different organization, too, where some of their switches were different than ours, the way we do them, the ability to keep it in front, why we do them. So it's still explaining the why to our guys right now, and I think it's going to click. I believe it's going to click, but there is a space where you talk about offensive terminology. There's some defensive terminology and some scheme-wise that we're still getting the grasp of.
Is your switching... you guys are not a drop team. I know you do a lot of red end and whatnot, but is your defense more, I don't want to say out of filter, but more different, I guess, than what the NBA norm is than your offense? Is that a fair statement?
I think, everyone is a little nuanced, and what you're trying to accomplish out of it. And I think those conversations will continue with the guys, our new guys. But it's every defense is a little nuanced. I think we still are trying to get a hold of what we're trying to get accomplished. But it was good to see us adjust in the second half and really grab onto what we're trying to do as a defensive team.
Thanks, guys.
All right. You got it.
All right, Frank, so a lot of big picture focus in that post-game press conference, but Coach does sound encouraged. His troops showing poise late and getting on the same page.
Yeah, and he only played 7 guys in the second half.
Right.
Again, Joe Harris, Seth Curry, they did not see the court in the third or the fourth quarter. I would like to have known, like, what goes through a coach's mind. You use your challenge in the second quarter, and at the time, I know you can't look into the future, and it was a big play because that was the shot by Cam Thomas that they called Dorian Finney-Smith for offensive basket interference. They challenged it, and they won that challenge. So those were 2 points that the Nets ended up getting. But there were 2 plays late in that fourth quarter where Trae looked like the ball went off of him, that Atlanta kept possession of the ball, and then that goaltend that they called on Cam Thomas. I thought that it didn't look like it when you watched the replay that it was a goaltending. So those are 2 big plays late in the game. But I get it where Jock is coming from. At that time, it felt right, but it is early in the game. You just wonder, maybe the league should come up with a different rule. If you win your challenge, maybe you get one
another,
more
right,
for the rest of the game, or maybe you get one per half. I get it. That would be 4 challenges. Now you might see the referees over at the scores table all game long, and then I'll be sitting here complaining that the games are taking too long. I understand that part of it, but it does seem a little unfair. The Nets, they were correct in the challenge that they had, and then there were 2 plays late in the game where if the referees had reviewed that, I think it would have been Nets basketball on both of them. So that seemed, those ended up being big plays. I would just like to know what a coach thinks about using the challenge really early in the game.
What do we always say? Frank rules. Right?
Yeah, sometimes we break the rules.
Time for another, or make them, right? Time for another break on the post-game show. Still more to come as we continue to break down the Nets' loss at the buzzer. A tough way to end their quick 2-game road trip out of the All-Star break. Stay with us.
The Nets post-game show on Yes is brought to you in part by your local Honda dealers.
We are back on the post-game show with a look at what is ahead for the Nets. A huge, huge week. It starts Tuesday against Milwaukee at Barclays Center. Then the following night, they will head to the Garden and face the Knicks, who are just percentage points behind 5th place Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference standings. The Nets will visit the NBA best Celtics on Friday before hosting Charlotte on Sunday. And like you said earlier, there are not a lot of breaks in the schedule. This is a particularly tough stretch. It will tell a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough stretch from now to the end of the season. 22 games left, and really there's only one stretch where the Nets get at least 2 games off before they have to play a game. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of, game, day off game, and then a couple of back-to-backs thrown in. It's going to be tough, and you showed that schedule. You get Milwaukee twice. The Knicks are absolutely flying. Boston's the best team in the league. It's going to be a big-time struggle over the next week or so.
Well, the high scorer for the Nets on the night was Cam Johnson. 27 points for him, including the huge 3-pointer with 7.3 seconds left in the game that tied it at 127 all. His best game as a Net so far. Here's Cam.
From when when you guys were down 18, to be able to cut it and get it to the point where you at least had an opportunity to win. Yeah. What changed in there to allow you guys?
I think it was a case of us finding a little bit our identity and what we want to do. When we start playing with pace, playing aggressive defense, switching, making it hard on the other team, then we can get on a roll. And I think that was an instance of us kind of finding that in that moment.
And your vantage point on the last look, I mean, did you think it was good? Did you think it either?
I mean, when he let it go, it looked good, but it was a, good defense by Mikal. And Spence almost got a piece of it, and it made him double pump. And on a shot like that, I mean, it's good defense, better offense. Got to give the guy credit. But still, there's no excuse. But, Kel was guarding all night, moving his feet, and he made a tough shot.
Cam, that corner 3 you hit to tie it, was that a set play? Then
no, absolutely not. Doe got loose and got to the basket, and he found me in the corner, so it was a great play on him to, probe and make that extra play for the next guy. And it just found me, and, I had missed one from that corner already and thought, no way, that one should have missed, so thought, no way I was going to miss that last one.
You guys were down, I think it was 8 with like 1:20 left, and you get back to tie. Just what'd you make of your guys' late game execution up until that straight shot?
There's things we still need to clean up for sure. But I think one thing, anybody can shoot in those final minute and a half, 2 minutes, which is kind of what we ran into the problem with Philly. You know, every team kind of has late game offense, late game sets they go to, and things of that nature. And in that game against Philly, you could see us bogged down in those last 4 minutes of what are we doing. I think today we kind of just kept our flow in those moments, and if you're open, shoot it, attack them, spread them out, and it was able to generate some points late. So I think that's something that we can build off of, and understanding what we want to execute down the stretch.
As somebody that grew up, you know, in one system, what do you find, I guess, more challenging to adjust to, the way they run their offense here or the way they defend?
I think it's the defensive end. Defense in the NBA is a lot of ways to do it, and it's all kind of on principles, you know, principles. And not to make any excuses, right, but for 4 years, I've had a coaching staff who was very adamant on certain principles, and, you know, it was on us to execute them at a high level, and after day after day after day of working on them, they get a little ingrained in your head, right? So some of the principles we have here in Brooklyn are almost complete opposite. You know, so it's a lot of it, you know, it is largely the same. Defense is defense, you got to stop the other team. But once we kind of iron out those instances where, you know, you're reacting a quarter of a second later, I think our defense will be a lot sharper once that becomes instinct, you know, once we're playing on that. There's a couple of rotations that I know personally over the last 5 games that I've missed just because I'm kind of caught in a middle ground where my mind is reverting back to old habits. But I think it's getting better. And, you know, as long as we continue to clean it up, and I think when we're the aggressors on the defensive end, that covers for a lot. You know, when we're the aggressors, that covers for a lot of that indecisiveness. So, you know, it's a work in progress, and it's something that I think we'll be able to build off of.
You know, Frank, his 27 points, that's the 3rd highest scoring game of his career. And it's not an excuse, but they really are learning to play with each other.
And I didn't think that was an issue tonight at all. I mean, they played fine tonight. I mean, they were down 8 with 1:17 to go, and they found a way to tie the game. So that, I know, you know, the reporters keep harping on that. That was not an issue tonight. Maybe it was an issue in the game where they were trailing by 50 points against the Chicago Bulls, but they looked sharp. You know, early on they fell behind by 18, but you could just tell by the way they were playing, the energy that they had. And I think Jock Vaughn, you know, it's almost as if he allows the first half to be the trial. And if you're not producing in the first half, there's a good chance you're not going to see time in the second half. And that was the case with Joe Harris and Seth Curry. That's why you saw Cam Thomas. And even Cam Thomas doesn't make a shot in the 4th quarter, but he's 5 for 5 from the free throw line. So I thought Jock was pushing all the right buttons. The biggest thing would be that final play, you know. Is there anything different they could have done? I like the fact you have Mikal Bridges on him. He's one of the better wing defenders in the league. Trae Young, like Cam Johnson said, just got to his spot on the court. Maybe trying to get the ball out of his hands, that's a possibility. But sometimes you just got to chalk it up to better offense, and I think that was the case tonight. But again, if you look at the last 1:17 of the game, the Nets are down 8. Atlanta should be able to, if there's an experienced Atlanta team, they should be able to close out that game. What do? DeJounte Murray has a terrible turnover. Trae Young misses a shot, which can happen, and then Bogdanovich makes a mindless play when he leaves Cam Johnson open. That's what kills you. What happened for the Brooklyn Nets? They were making all the right plays down the stretch. It was the Hawks that were kind of self-destructing. But Trae Young, that's what happens. One basket like that kind of erases all those mistakes.
Yeah, that's the story today. Our game was one of 4 afternoon matchups on the NBA slate this Sunday. When we come back after another break on the postgame show, we've got highlights from other early contests. Stay there. Time to go around the NBA as promised with highlights, and we start with Brooklyn's next opponent, the Bucks. They played earlier today when they hosted the Suns, who continued to play without KD as he works his way back from that knee injury that he suffered before the Nets traded him away. 3rd quarter, Drew Holiday, Grayson Allen, alley-oop. Giannis loves that. Seconds left, Devin Booker with the ball.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all works with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. 2 terrific players. Devin Booker's been great. He's only going to get better playing with Kevin Durant.
Bucks up 1, Holiday. Oh, ankle breaker. Sinking the pull-up 3 to give the Bucks the lead. Holiday finished with 33 points. After the Suns tied at 100, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez.
Great play by Chris Middleton, getting Brook Lopez going to the basket.
Final seconds, Suns down 3. Booker driving, trying to tie it. Nope, loses the handle. That'll do it. The Bucks win it 104-101, and they extend their winning streak to 14, Frank.
It's still no idea whether or not Giannis will be available for Tuesday's game. He was pretty active on the bench during the game, so there's a chance he will be playing at Barclays Center on Tuesday night.
Next up, Chicago, Wizards and Bulls. Second quarter here. DeMar DeRozan driving to the basket, hits the little floater. Bulls early lead. Later in the quarter, Nikola Vucevic, he finds Zach LaVine down low, who will slam it home. 38-35 for the Bulls. On to the third quarter.
I was wondering when you guys were going to show these highlights. How about the Chicago Bulls, though, getting out of the blocks pretty quickly for the final third of the season? 2 good wins for them, both at home. Who knows, maybe. They didn't make any trades at the deadline as Kobe White hits a deep 3 right there. But the Chicago Bulls didn't make any moves at the deadline. All they did was add Patrick Beverley on a buyout as DeMar DeRozan. That's his shot, the mid-range jumper, turnaround right there, nails it.
Coming off that big win, they win again. Bulls 102-182, inching towards that 500 mark, 28-33, still 5 games below. And the Lakers and the Mavericks. Second quarter here, Christian Wood to the cutting Kyrie Irving.
Dallas, for the first time, won a game the other night with both Kyrie and Luka Doncic. But tonight, they were up 27 points in this game against the Lakers, who are still trying to play their way into the play-in tournament. LeBron, though, leading the comeback.
He drove it in there. Lakers tied it. In fact, they took the lead, 83-81. Later in the quarter, Anthony Davis, the big turnaround jumper. Lakers up 1 next possession. It's Luka. Mavs back up top, 101-99. Later still, Lakers ball, but missed by Dennis Schroeder. AD cleaning things up. Wow.
And the Lakers end up winning this game 111-108. Kyrie, desperation 3 at the buzzer. Misses it, so the Lakers on the road come back from 27 down. That is a miserable loss for the Dallas Mavericks at home with both Luka and Kyrie. Again, they've only won 1 game together as teammates.
AD and LeBron 30 and 26 respectively. Time for another break on the postgame show. Stay with us. More reaction on the way as we continue to break down Brooklyn's 129-127 loss in Atlanta. The Nets erase an 18-point deficit, but lose at the buzzer. Earlier today, in split squad action, the Yankees played their first home game of spring training, defeating the Braves in a matchup that featured a grand slam by Jose Trevino and some impressive pitching performances. It was carried live on the SF, and we will bring you an encore presentation as soon as the Nets post-game show ends. Exciting. Much was decided on the three-point line as we come back to our game, basketball. Atlanta hitting 16 of 30, 53.3% from long range.
Yeah, and if you look at DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, they only combined for 5 of them. But this was really more about the first half with the Atlanta Hawks. They were making, they were standing out there drilling shots. That's why they were able to build the 18-point lead. There's Trae Young against a good defender, being able to create space to knock down a long shot.
The Nets, meanwhile, they were good on 14 of 39, 35.9%. It's definitely one of the factors on the day.
Yeah, well, and the biggest three-pointer of the game was the late one by Cam Johnson. The Nets were down 3. Actually, when they were down 6, you had Dorian Finney-Smith knocking down the 3, and then the next time down, Cam Johnson. So the Nets, when they needed to make big shots, did. The big thing here, though, the combination of DeJounte Murray and Trae Young combining for 62 points. Then you add the Bogdanovich, 22 off the bench. Both DeJounte Murray and Trae Young each had 12 field goals. They go a combined 24 of 47 from the floor.
And Bogdanovich, 5 of 8 from 3. So he hit 5 of those, yeah, 50 of the 16 made.
Yeah, and I think, again, DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, it's a dynamic backcourt. I think sometimes the problem, though, is one of them has the ball in their hands, and they're trying to put on a show, and everyone else on the team is just kind of standing around. They were making shots tonight, to their credit. Again, DeJounte Murray makes very difficult shots. Trae Young ends up making the one where he gets into the paint at the end of the game, and obviously the little jumper from about 12 feet out.
So 28 points for him today, coming off a 25-point effort. Taking a look now, Brooklyn's turnaround in three-point shooting during the second half led to 4 Nets finishing the game with at least 20 points each, including Mikal Bridges. He ended up with 24 as part of a balanced line that included a couple of makes from the perimeter. Let's hear what Bridges has to say.
Mikal, describe to me what changed that allowed you guys to chip away at that 18-point lead that was important.
Just getting stops. I think that was the biggest thing. Helps our offense getting up playing transition. So, yeah, our best offense is, our best defense. So that's what it was, just getting stops.
Jock told us that you guys are constantly and still getting to know each other. With a game like this, what did you learn about this group that you guys are able to accomplish?
Just staying together when times get tough. They made runs and stuff, but part of the game, we didn't just fall. We just kept fighting and all the way to the end.
When the threes weren't falling, was there anything that the Hawks offensively did, or did you like those looks, and what changed that started those threes falling?
I think we had a lot of good looks. We just was missing them. It's tough, but just got good looks. Yeah, but I like the shots we took.
And on that last play, it looked like when Trae Young got open, what did you see on that last play that allowed him to get that shot off?
I just got to stay disciplined. I jumped, I just left my feet, but just got to stay disciplined.
And how would you describe just the overall mentality of this group coming off of Friday, having a game like this as you guys now head back home?
We just show fight, effort, but just obviously not enough, but we can learn from it.
Coach using his starters for a whole lot of minutes, and Mikal Bridges just about 38 minutes on the floor tonight.
And Mikal Bridges had some good moments already. He had the 45 points that he already scored in a game, which was a career high. But this is now what happens when you're asked to do a lot more than in the past you've been asked to do. There was the game against Philadelphia where he had that layup that he missed at the end, and you could tell that wore on him for a while. And tonight you can tell it really bothers him that he allowed Trae Young to pump fake him off of his feet, because Mikal Bridges is a two-way player, takes a lot of pride in his defense, and Cam Johnson mentioned it. Sometimes you got to give the offensive player, a lot of the credit. In that case, Trae Young makes the shot. But you could tell that Mikal Bridges, it bothers him because he had a moment this year offensively where he missed a layup, which could have won a game. If you get a stop there, it doesn't mean you're going to win. It's going into overtime. But clearly takes a lot of pride in it. That's something where that's actually a good sign. Exactly. That's a good sign for the Brooklyn Nets.
Brooklyn Bridges.
There you go.
That's pretty good. Yeah, of course he likes it. We all do. Time for one more break on the post-game show. Stay with us. We are not finished yet as we continue to wrap up Brooklyn's buzzer beater loss in Atlanta. Final thoughts on the way. This is how it was decided, Frank. Trae Young.
Yeah, and it comes down to offense versus defense. This is an example of good offense and really bad defense. Spencer Dinwiddie looking for an opening. Once he gets inside the three-point line, he passes it. Dorian Finney-Smith cuts into the lane. Why is Bogdanović leaving Cam Johnson? So that's bad defense being beaten by good offense. And then, of course, the final possession here for the Atlanta Hawks, allowing the ball to go in the backcourt. I like this. Don't chase after Trae Young, because if he blows past you there, your defense is broken down. So Mikal Bridges, everything is good up until that point right there where he gets off of his feet. Trae Young pump fakes him. So look where Mikal Bridges ends up on the pump fake. Look how far away he is from the shot. Spencer Dinwiddie comes over, tries to block it. So that's okay defense, not good enough clearly for a player of Trae Young's ability. So really bad defense by the Hawks. The Nets took advantage. Okay defense by the Nets, and Trae Young exploiting them big time for a game-winning shot.
He had that open window, and he took the shot, and he made it. Okay, it does not get any easier. Final thoughts now. Milwaukee, Knicks, Celtics.
Yeah, well, it's about getting one, and it's about Tuesday night against the Milwaukee Bucks. And Milwaukee's been an unbelievable role, 14 in a row. Giannis hasn't played for a couple of games. I have a funny feeling he'll be available for that game in Brooklyn on Tuesday night. So that might be the hardest game that the Nets have had to play in a really long time. But guess what? The one thing you love coming out of today's game is the fight that they showed. Down 18, came back, took a lead. Down 8 with 1:17 to go, came back and tied it. So Jacque Vaughn's not going to be happy with the result. He'll be happy, though, with the performance.
As he said, we need to be the hardest playing team, and we are seeing that.
That's absolutely.
Thanks, Frank. That's all
seeing
for
you,
this
Nancy.
post-game show. Right back at you. Once again, the final score from Atlanta. Hawks a winner, 129-127. Brooklyn fights its way back after trailing by 18, but loses on that Trae Young buzzer beater. Remember, coverage of Tuesday's game against Milwaukee starts at 7 o'clock. For Frank and all of us, I'm Nancy Newman. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.